The SNC-Lavalin scandal is back in the headlines again at the start of another week. A scandal that has, of course, engulfed Justin Trudeau and his government since early February, more than 2 months. And the Conservatives are calling this legal bullying. Let's bring in our commentators who are standing by from the left, the centre, and the right, NDP, Conservative, Liberal. We've got Jamie Ellerton standing by. We've also got Tom Parkin standing by. And in Ottawa, we've got Jeff Turner as well, who I'm going to start with today. And welcome back to the panel, Jeff. Always good to have you on. What do you make of this lawsuit, the threat thereof?
Yeah, I think I'd like to start by actually looking backwards just a little bit. On the first point, I think it's really important for your viewers to understand that this actually isn't really all that new in politics. We look back at 2007, 2008, when Prime Minister Stephen Harper then issued an identical style letter and initiated a suit against the Liberal Party of Canada for what he saw to be defamatory comments made by the then leader and party. We look back a little further than that. Paul Martin, as Prime Minister, filed a similar letter against opposition leader Stephen Harper. So even in recent history, this isn't actually all that new. I come out of the Ontario background. I look back there. You have Premier Kathleen Wynne also filing similar letters and suits against opposition leaders, both Patrick Brown, Tim Hudak, and Lisa MacLeod. And I just would comment that in the cases in Ontario especially, the language that had happened before those letters and those suits were filed certainly took a markedly different tone afterwards. I think the message was received, even if this didn't have to go to a criminal or to a courtroom or to a trial of some kind, the message was enough to curb the discussion back to what I think is a reasonable place. I think the other way I'd like to look back at this for your viewers is to look at the last 10 days. This letter was issued privately, not publicly, not leaked to the media, unlike a lot of the things that seem to be happening in this scandal. They were sent to the opposition leader on March the 31st. That is 9 days ago from today. And then on Sunday, we had this released by the leader of the opposition. So I think it's not fair to characterize this as a move by the Prime Minister out in public. It certainly is a move that has now been brought out to light by the leader of the opposition. I think we just heard in question period that, in fact, some of the allegedly defamatory tweets have been deleted, which I think shows you right there and then that there is actually some merit to this. And finally, I think on Sunday, it was really curious to watch this story unfold. You had the Conservative Party and the leader making noises first thing in the morning. We have new documents, we have new evidence, we have new things for this scandal. And all day long on the Sunday shows and on the news programs, everybody talked about what could this be?
Right.
What's coming out next? How is it going to change the story? And lo and behold, it was this. It had nothing to do with the actual issue. It had to do with this letter. But there's a whole news day.
Yeah, let me jump in here, Jeff. I got to get the other people on. What about you, Jamie Ellerton? What do you think about this? Your read.
So I think this is a great way to keep the SNC-Lavalin scandal back in the news. I can't help but notice Jeff didn't even try to litigate the actual heart of the matter, is whether or not Prime Minister Trudeau inappropriately pressured the Attorney General to try and get them to drop criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. And if you look at all the testimony before committee, the countless of meetings, text messages, emails, phone calls, there clearly was an effort by the Prime Minister's office and others around it to have the Attorney General change her mind on this. So if the Liberals would like to have this brought up in discovery and actually go to trial to perhaps really split hairs in the nuance of language here, the Conservatives will be able to fundraise off this to frankly pay for these legal bills. And Justin Trudeau is going to look like he's trying to shut down conversation on this using intimidating legal tactics. And it's going to make sure that Canadians continue to talk about the SNC-Lavalin affair and the Prime Minister's very direct role in all of this.
Tom, what's your read on this?
Well, I actually read the letter very carefully from Mr. Porter. Now, keep in mind that Julian Porter is a top Canadian litigator. He is very well respected. And if he misses something, if there's a gap in the letter, it's not a mistake. He left it there. And the key thing about the letter is that while it addresses many claims that really haven't been made, it doesn't address the central claim that is being made and is most worrying. He does not, in his letter anywhere, address the central claim that the Prime Minister pressured the Attorney General to interfere and to end the trial. That is the central concern of this entire story, that the Prime Minister pressured the Attorney General to interfere in the prosecution. Mr. Porter's letter says that the Prime Minister didn't interfere in the trial. Well, that's true. Of course not. He tried to pressure the Attorney General to interfere in the trial. Mr. Porter's letter says that Mr. Trudeau wasn't aware that Ms. Wilson-Raybould was feeling pressured. But this is neither here nor there. The issue is, did he pressure her? And we know, we listened to the Warnock tape, We heard him say, I'm here on behalf of the Prime Minister. We heard him say, I'm going to report back to the Prime Minister. We heard him say that the Prime Minister is very firm on this. You're on a collision course, loggerheads, and he's going to get what he wants one way or the other. And later, of course, she was removed by a new Attorney General who says he's now open to interfering in the prosecution to give a company with a long history of corruption here in Canada and abroad a break at trial. So let's keep focused on what, in fact, is the issue here. The Prime Minister pressuring the AG to interfere.
Okay, let's move on. The other thing we're following today, and I want to go back to Jeff on this, has to do with Jody Wilson-Raybould, the woman at the center of all of this, of course, who has been under fire, and you know this, perhaps either overtly, covertly by some who say she is helping the Conservatives to win the election in 2010 by what she has done. But, you know, inadvertently, or whatever the case may be, she, of course, says that's completely not true. She's pushing back over this, saying this has nothing to do with me trying to help anyone. This has to do with standing up for the truth and my principles. Jeff, what's your read on it?
I think one of the unfortunate realities of 2019 and campaigning in 2019 is that we're so driven by the sort of social media conversation out there. And by we, I mean the people who are inside the bubble on this especially. And so I don't put much stock in these conspiracy theories that, you know, that there's a cabal working behind the scenes to try to do this. Does the story have that, what we call the drip, 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 and very strategic timing and very strategic ways of going about discussing the issue? Of course it does, but I don't think that's in pursuit of a larger conspiracy of working with another party per se. So I don't give much credence to those conversations that, frankly, I think are happening mostly on Twitter. I would say from one thing I observed in the interviews that followed, of all the politicians that I've worked with in over a decade in politics, most of them are very, very hesitant to use the word I. I am this and I am that, and it just doesn't come off as something where, you know, you're interested in what the views of others are, what the views of your team is, what the views of your constituent is. It's I am right and I am going forward. That's something I actually pulled out of those interviews. There's a lot of I's and not a lot of we's or what's important.
Yeah, do you know why there was a lot of I's in that, Todd? It's because the entire Liberal Party apparatus has been trying to absolutely assassinate her political character for standing up to this Prime Minister and doing what is right and making sure that they were not interfering in the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. So when you are being dragged under the bus repeatedly and having your professional reputation destroyed, you probably are going to stand up pretty vigorously to talk about what you did, speak to the underlying principles that are at the heart of Canadian democracy and to why that mattered, and to push back on the so-called team and the we's and the good let's have a big hug crowd that Jeff's wanting to talk about here. Well,
and I think when we're talking about Jody Wilson-Raybould, certainly some Liberals who may believe that she is a Liberal, of course, and still believes in those values, are sort of saying, and I'll get your take on this, Tom Parkin, saying, you know what, principles are one thing, but you are inadvertently helping the Conservatives to win the next election. So, you know, you need to realize who brung you to the dance, so to speak.
Right. Well, I mean, I think Jeff is correct. I mean, nobody can think that Jody Wilson-Raybould was like some sleeper cell for the Conservative Party. That's clearly ridiculous. The more general assertion is that this whole thing has helped the Conservatives, but I'm not sure that that's true either. It seems to me that the NDP has been the major beneficiary here, especially in Vancouver, because the poll that showed this weekend that it was about a 2-to-1 in Vancouver, it was a 2-to-1 support for Jody Wilson in this debate, supporting Jody Wilson-Raybould over the Prime Minister, also showed that Jagmeet Singh's NDP is in the lead by I think it was 8 points in the city of Vancouver, and they had moved up and the Liberals had moved down. I don't think a lot of people, Todd, say, hey, listen, you know, I'm really, really worried that the Liberals are too cozy with unsavory corporations that are too powerful in today's society. I'm going to go vote Conservative. That's just not the way it goes. It's the line of thinking is, this is very unsavory. I thought something different was going to be happening with the Liberals, but they turn out like they're just like Conservatives. Maybe I should think about voting for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP this time. That seems to be what's getting traction.
Gentlemen, great to have the three of you with us, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the panel today.
Thanks, Todd.